The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello, my name is Patty Hunter, and this is my show, Patty's Page. Today's special guest with us is Pamela Stenzel. Is that right?
That's my long official name.
Okay, I said it.
Just Pam Stenzel is how I'm typically known. So.
Pam Stenzel.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, she's very involved with the pro-life movement here in the USA. Welcome to my show, Pam.
Great to be with you. Great to be in Indiana.
Yeah, whereabouts you from? Where are you born and raised?
Well, I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I left at 18. I'm the oldest of 8 children. And so I graduated from high school and said, I'm out of here. And I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And then after I got married, I moved to Minnesota, where my husband is from, and lived in Minnesota for 29 years. And my youngest, I have 3 children, they're all grown. My youngest went off to university, went to Texas, and he said, Mom, I'm going to Texas and I'm not coming back to Minnesota. I said, good, because your dad and I are moving to Florida. So I now live in Tampa, Florida, because I'm old and I was done with Siberia. So I visit Minnesota.
That was my cat. That was Boots. Anyway, you're married for how long again?
I've been married for almost 40 years. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, a long time.
You don't look that age, girl.
60 is fast approaching, Patty. So yes, and I'm a grandmother too. I have 2 beautiful granddaughters that are age 4 and 9, and yeah. So I've been a grandma for 9 years. I enjoy that title. That's the best.
So you're living in Florida now. How's the weather there? Is it pretty good?
It's beautiful. It's not been the nicest winter this year, but for me, it's beautiful because right now it's still warm during the day and it's not so hot at night, but that's about to change. It'll be hot all the time very shortly. So
yeah, compared to here, it'll be great.
Yeah.
So you have brothers and sisters yourself? How many?
I do. So I was my backstory, and probably the reason I got involved in the pro-life movement, is my biological mother was 14 years old or 15 when she had me, and was raped, and she chose to give me my life, and because I'm older, it was back in the mid-60s, abortion was not legal in the state of Michigan, even in the cases of rape. And so my life was spared probably by the amazing pro-life people of the state of Michigan in the 60s. Clearly, Michigan has come a long way in the wrong direction today. But back when I was conceived, and my birth mother is my hero. She not only gave me my life, but she gave me my amazing family. So I am the oldest of 8. My parents had trouble conceiving, and they'd been married for 7 years, and Mom wasn't getting pregnant. She just wanted to be a mom. And so they adopted me, and 3 weeks later, she found out she was pregnant, had my brother. So they have 1 biological child, and then they adopted 6 more. So of the 8 of us, 7 of us are adopted, and then my brother, just younger than me, we're about 14 months apart, is the bio child. People used to ask me, who's the real one? But he's my buddy. We grew up close together, and on his birthday, I sent him a little card that said, "Dear brother, on your birthday, I just wanted to remind you, I was planned, you were an accident." So we tease each other
Oh my
a lot
goodness,
in
what
my
he
family.
must think of me.
But listen, my mom's family, so my grandfather was very pro-life, well, the whole family, but my grandpa, specifically my mom's father, Grandpa Berg, he would pray outside abortion clinics in Grand Rapids, Michigan until he was over 80 and then passed away. He was the most amazing pro-life mom or man. So he had 12 children. My mom is one of 12 children, 9 girls and 3 boys. And of the 9 girls, the sisters, 6 of them had fertility trouble and were some of them unable to have children at all. And so out of the 87 grandchildren on that side of my family, 38 of us are adopted. So one of my mom's sisters adopted 14, another adopted 8, another 7. One had 10 of her own, biological, and so I mean it's crazy. My extended family. My grandfather, when people would say, people say to you, well, if you don't want these girls to go in there and have an abortion, are you going to take all these babies? And my grandfather would say, I'll take every one of them. And he would quote the Psalms. He said, Blessed children are an inheritance of the Lord. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full. He will not be put to shame at the enemy's gate. And my grandpa was like just the most amazing, godly, and obviously truly pro-life man.
Well, your family go forth and multiply, so they didn't have to be from the same mom. But you did good. I'm very happy that your family was like that. Still is.
Yes, it was beautiful. It was a blessing for me. And so obviously I grew up completely pro-life. And when I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago at 18, at Moody Bible Institute, you're required to do practical Christian ministry. It's not if you want to, it is a requirement of being a student at that school. And they at first signed me to Awana, and I had well enough of Awana at that point in my life. So I begged and pleaded. And interesting enough, my mom was volunteering at a pregnancy center in Grand Rapids at the time. And actually, my mom's worked at a precious pregnancy center as a nurse she retired at 82, just about, it'll be 2 years ago, right this month. So can imagine my mom had been doing that. But as a high school student, I saw my mom volunteering at the pregnancy center. So I thought maybe I could do it. 18 years old, I went to the Loop Pregnancy Center, downtown Chicago. The executive director said, if you're willing to take our 25 hours of training, we will certainly use you. Moody Bible Institute, this is 1983. Moody Bible Institute agreed to allow that to be my practical Christian ministry. So at 18 years old, as a Bible college student, I began working in a pregnancy center in downtown Chicago. And it was such an amazing and life-changing experience for me that I transferred from Moody to Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, who was one of the only Christian colleges at the time that had a psychology program specifically for working in pregnancy centers and pro-life pregnancy centers. So I went and got my degree in clinical psychology. Subsequently, about 10 years later, I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. But I began working in pregnancy centers after college and after I got married in Minneapolis. And so the first pregnancy center I was executive director was called Alpha Women's Center in Prior Lake, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And so that it was, for me, it was, I just wanted to reach out to these women. I wanted to give back, knowing my own birth mother story and just feeling like what I knew my birth mother needed in that horrible moment of trauma was not to have me ripped violently from her womb, not to replace violence with more violence. What my birth mother needed was someone to love her, to come alongside her and saying, we're going to walk through this with you and we're going to be there for you. And so I really feel like my entire adult life, as I've been walking with women and experiencing crisis pregnancies, I'm doing that on behalf of my birth mother, whom I've never met, and just believing and knowing that what she needed in that moment was someone to love her. And so I was working in the pregnancy clinic in Minnesota, and when you run a pro-life a pregnancy center and it's nonprofit, you have to raise money. And so I knew I needed to get out into the churches, let the churches know what we're doing, and raise money. And at the same time, I really had a heart's desire to reach the teenagers because, you know, it's like, so I would go to youth pastors and I'd say, I'd much rather talk to your teenagers at church on Wednesday night than have to see them in my office or at my clinic the next morning. Back in the day, these youth pastors were all like, not our kids that go to church, Pam. They're all fine. I'm like, wait a minute. Here's my intake at the pregnancy clinic. When was the first day of your last period and where do you go to church? It's your kids. And it's unfair that these girls are making decisions about sex without having any of the information. Girls would come into my clinic for a pregnancy test, scared to death, waiting for the results of that pregnancy test. I walk in, look at this little girl and say, your test is negative, sweetheart, you're not pregnant. And she would get this look of relief over her face, like, I'm off the hook, I'm not pregnant. Thank you very much, let me out of your clinic. Wait a minute. Have you been tested for syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HPV, HIV? Have you been tested for that? She looks at me like, me, you know, I live in Fort Wayne. I don't live in Indianapolis. I mean, why do I need to get tested for that? And the reality is these young people, students, college students, teenagers, believe that the worst consequence of their decision to have sex outside of marriage is pregnancy. And it's because as a culture, we've made pregnancy the disease, and we absolutely ignore the actual disease. Pregnancy is not a disease, it's survivable.
No,
you can do it.
it's natural for a man.
Right. And that's what was
the
the intention of that act, right? And so I really was just, it's unfair. And I've said this for years. It is unfair to have young people, especially our girls, making decisions about sex without fully understanding the end consequence of that choice and understand what's up on the line. And I tell kids every day, I didn't come to your school. Did what?
Who is at fault here? Not telling
everyone. So parents need to be talking to their kids, but they're not because they were never talked to and they don't have the information. That's number one. And if there are parents listening, hear me very carefully. The job of teaching values and your faith to your children is not the churches. It's not the schools. It's not the Catholic schools. It's not the Lutheran schools. It is 100% the parents. That is your job. And so you are the ones who are tasked with passing on values and faith to your children. And Deuteronomy says you need to be doing it when they get up in the morning, when they walk in the way, when they go to bed at night. And I've said this to parents and teens forever. If your teenager has not recently looked at you and rolled their eyes and did this number,
yeah,
you told me a million times, you're not talking enough. That is my gauge. I expect the eye roll. I expect my teenagers to look at me and tell me I've told them too many times because that's my job. And, you know, I always said when my kids were teens, they were not my friend. I have friends. I don't need them. My children have a lot of friends. They don't need me to be their friend. I am their mother. That is a different thing.
Now, your main mission in life then is to teach, educate, you might say?
Well, it turned that way, Patty, but this was 1993. I was running a pregnancy center and I started to speak to teenagers, and I got a call from Youth for Christ out of Minneapolis. And to this day, I don't know who the man was, but a man approached Youth for Christ, wrote a check for $20,000 and said, this talk that this pregnancy center director is doing to teenagers needs to be on video. Now, Patty, I'm old enough that when we taped that in 1995, it was on VHS tape. And I didn't know where this was going to go, you know, Minnesota, maybe Wisconsin, if I, you know, went really far. That VHS tape, the original talk was called Sex as a Price Tag. It's been translated in 11 languages and used in 41 countries around the world. And so about the late 90s, probably 96, 97, was my husband was like, are you going to travel and speak, or are you going to direct this pregnancy center? Because you can't do both. It's just too much, right? And so we made a decision to move to his family farm in Minnesota, and he was home with our children, and I began traveling around the world. And up until COVID kind of turned everything on its head. I was speaking to about 500,000 teenagers worldwide every year.
On Zoom?
So, pardon?
Go on Zoom as well?
Well, before COVID, we didn't do a lot of this. I was on planes and traveling and flying to all over the world. Right before COVID, I was in Uganda, Kenya, Cairo, London, Dublin, Glasgow, ended my school year in Johannesburg and South Africa. So I was traveling not only around the United States and Canada, but around the world. And then it started to slow down a little bit before COVID, but COVID shut it down completely. And so then I had to kind of rearrange some of my life and started working with pregnancy centers in Florida. So I've been the client service director for community pregnancy clinics. We operate 5 pregnancy clinics in Florida, Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, and I opened up the new pregnancy clinic at the University of Florida in Gainesville in 2019. And so I kind of now got my feet in both worlds. On the pregnancy center world, I still travel and speak some, but I'm also working back where I started in the early 90s, back in the pregnancy centers, and specifically on the college campus of the University of Florida, where we have 55,000 students. And listen, I can track both the abortion rate and the STI infection rate in any state, but certainly in Florida, by the university campus. So if you wanted to know where your highest STI rates and your abortion rates are in Indiana, you just need to look at in the University of Indiana. Follow your college system, Notre Dame, any university system, Ball State. You're going to see that. And so the one of the most important things is that we are in those communities with our message of life and hope, and with our message, we're building a culture of life. Yes, we're saving babies. Yes, we want moms not to choose abortion, but we want to build a culture of life where not only life is respected from conception until natural death, but where our bodies are, and our respect for each other and our honor of our sexuality and our bodies, and that we're treating ourselves as who we are, human beings made in the image of God. Yes. And we treat each other as human beings made in the image of God by their creator. And so it deals with the sexuality. It's going to cross all of these issues. And so I've told students forever that I can't choose for them what they're going to do about sex. What I don't want them to have to say is they didn't know. And these are the consequences. And if you are indeed created in God's image, you are his creation. God created you, and God created sex, and he created that amazing union of two people becoming one flesh. His design was that a man and a woman would leave their families, consecrate themselves, make a covenant sacramentally before God to love each other freely, totally, faithfully in this one relationship, one man and one woman. And in this amazing design, fruitfully, right? They would bring forth new life. So that was God's complete design for children, for families, for marriage. And when we reject our creator and we reject his design and we shake our fists in his face and tell him we don't need him, God doesn't need to tell me how to live my life, I can do it my way, there is going to be a cost, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's the message we've got to bring an entire generation back to understand.
Choose, re-educate.
Pardon?
Since the 60s, it's been downhill.
Oh, please. And for those of you who follow, and I follow both John Paul II, but also Humana Vitae, if you look at Humana Vitae from the 60s, that there it was an exact description of exactly what was going to happen when we reject God's creation, when we reject humans created in his image, and when we reject his design for marriage and sexuality. And John Paul II obviously expounded on that beautifully, in the teaching of John Paul II is probably some of the most profound spiritual teaching on this issue, on life and marriage and sexuality and family.
I was Roman Catholic many moons ago, and Pope John Paul was my favorite. I grieved when he died.
Yeah. I actually, as a non-Catholic at the time in 1996, went to see Pope John Paul II in Denver at the youth, and I was moved beyond. It was just the most amazing experience. So yeah, a spiritual hero of mine.
Yeah, I was there when he came to Toronto. I'm from Toronto, and I was one
Oh,
of the
okay.
people who security in the whole place where he was visiting. And I saw the
Wow.
Pope mobile go by not more than 6 feet away from me.
Wow. I didn't get that close in Denver. There were too many people.
But I actually saw him, and he was my favorite. I'm
uh,
Lutheran now, but we're still pushing. Anyway, uh, safe haven, baby, boxes.
Oh yeah, so listen, I kind of feel like on the pro-life issue, as far as the unborn go, I'm kind of on every angle now. So I spent my life working with women in crisis pregnancies in the pregnancy center. I started talking to kids before, because people always say to you, well, what are you doing about it before they even get pregnant? So yeah, we want that not to happen. If we could have young people do the right thing when it comes to sex, we would have way fewer abortions than we have now. Most all abortions are done on unmarried women. So,
Bring the
so I've been
family
working on
together.
that. Pardon?
Bring the family back together, man, woman, children, not
Well,
separate
right,
them.
and then having teenagers choose to not have sex outside of marriage is going to save so many babies, because that's the vast majority of abortions that are happening. So so I was doing that, and then I was asked, because I was conceived in rape and was adopted and loved, and that story was very public, been public since I started speaking.
Mm-hmm.
There was a senator here in the state of Indiana, Richard Murdoch, who had made a statement that children who were conceived in rape were planned by God or loved by God, whatever he said. And of course, the other side at the time, this was over 10 years ago, the other side at the time was like, oh, how dare he? Richard Murdoch said that God plans rape, which we all know that's not what he said.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I
twisted.
got a call from a woman by the name of Rebecca Kiesling, who was an attorney out of Michigan, who was conceived in rape, and we were friends. We knew each other. We had the same backstory. She said, Pam, will you fly to Indiana and speak at this press conference in supporting Richard Murdoch and the fact that children who were conceived in rape deserve life as well? And so I flew in, and at the press conference was this little girl lady. She was the cutest thing. I call her little because she's littler than me. And her name was Monica Kelsey. And I met
Monica,
Monica that day, and we kind of bonded. She had the same story. She had not been very public with her story, having been conceived and raped at the time. And so she approached me and she said, Pam, I want to do more speaking and telling my story. And typically, when people approach me and they say, hey, I want to be a speaker, my typical response is, don't quit your day job. Get out there and speak. And if you're good at it, people will have you speak. And if you're not, find something else to do with your life. So Monica for some reason, Monica and I just really bonded. And so I called her up about 6 months later and I said, listen, I'm going to South Africa. I'm going to South Africa for 2 weeks. I said, if you can pay your flight, that's all I need you to pay. I'll take care of you for 2 weeks. I'll take you on the speaking tour, and then you can speak at some of the events I'm speaking at, and I'll give you some time in my talk to tell your story. And so it was in Cape Town, South Africa, on that trip that we walked into a church And right in the foyer or the outside before you walk in through to the foyer of the church, there was what looked like a bank deposit box, and it said "baby safe." And I'm like, "What in the heck? What is that?" And Monica were asking them, and they said they'd had so many abandoned babies at that church. The pastor finally said, "This isn't going to happen anymore." And he built this device. It calls 911. And if a mom, wants to surrender or safely surrender the baby, she can put the baby in there. And they had over 7 babies surrendered that way in their box at that time. So literally, and I had said to Monica earlier, because I knew the addition of her story, that she was conceived and raped, but then abandoned as an infant, and that she had met her birth mother. I said, Monica, you do know there are safe haven laws, and maybe God calls all of us to some ministry, and we, I'm like, maybe God's kind of calling you to work on that angle, as well. And that was before we even saw the baby box. When she saw that baby box, and she'll tell you, in fact, the Delta napkin is here at Safe Haven Baby Box headquarters. She wrote the plans for Safe Haven Baby Boxes on a Delta napkin on our flight back from Cape Town back into the United States. And I was on her board. Yeah, she asked me to be on the board. So the board consisted of Joe, Monica, and me. There's 3 of us. And actually, I ran her hotline at the time because I have the degree and I've worked with women experiencing crisis pregnancies for my entire life. And so I answered the hotline. I was chairman of her board. And we went from 2 little boxes in Indiana to today we are in 16 states. Tomorrow we will bless the 217th box in the country. In Clinton, Tennessee, and we're getting more and more states signing on. We just opened our first box in Texas, and that state's massive. So it's been amazing. We have helped over 140 women face-to-face surrender where a box wasn't available then through our counseling and the hotline. And we, as of today, have had 44 babies surrendered in our boxes across the country.
That's okay.
And so it's amazing. So with the exponential growth, Monica and I last fall began talking, and I said, I'm going to step down as chairman of the board, and I'm going to take a position as development director. I'm still going to run the hotline, but I'm going to start helping in the states that have new law, get boxes, get the fundraising for it, get the community together to be able to provide this. And so I'm officially development director and the outreach director with the hotline. So
I did the opening. I filmed, Patty's Page filmed the opening of the first baby box in Woodburn.
In Woodburn. I was there, Patty. Yeah, I was there.
I will send you that YouTube.
Yeah, well, my son, who is in film editing and production, that's what he went to school for, was also there. You probably saw him with his official camera equipment and filmed both that one and the Michigan City opening. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to bow out right now because it's the end of the 30 minutes, my friend.
I know, goes fast, doesn't it, Patty?
We should go on again, another show. We love you.
All right. God bless.
We'll see you next week. Thank you, and God bless.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always for the rest of our lives.